This is Chelsen Vicari for IRD, and I am checking in with you from Wild Goose Festival. That's why I look a bit sticky and sweaty and more casual than I ever would for work. But I wanted to verbally process for a bit because I don't have the endurance after such a long day at Wild Goose Festival, which for those of you who don't know, it's a gathering of the religious left on a sprawling campground in North Carolina. And it's fashioned after, I would say, Woodstock or Burning Man, but specifically Greenbelt in the UK. Anyway, so if you want to know what the religious left really thinks, without the nice sounding language, go to Wild Goose. That's where I've been. Anyway, I went to this one particular session not 30 minutes ago, and it was titled, Reproductive Justice is Moving Beyond the Pro-Choice, Pro-Life Binary. So what I expected was to have the consistent pro-life message or narrative given, but that is not at all what I heard. So I get my stuff and I go to this session. I figured it'd be well attended, which it was. Mostly women, all different ages, mostly white women, but rather packed. So I'm waiting for the speakers to arrive, and then I noticed two women wearing Planned Parenthood t-shirts. And of course, there are two speakers. They're wearing specifically Planned Parenthood Memphis t-shirts, and they say trust women. And so I think, oh boy. So they sit down in the front. So the two Planned Parenthood workers are giving the discussion or leading this breakout session. There was one other woman, though she didn't have much to contribute. She worked for another, quote, reproductive justice nonprofit, I believe she said in the Memphis area. So I think here we go. And all it was a blatantly pro-abortion breakout session. And I'm sort of sitting there in disbelief that it's so openly pro-abortion, though they're using the term reproductive justice, but they're also using the term abortion rights. And I had been all day in sessions where we're talking about advocating for the marginalized, for seeking justice, and so I thought it very brazen of Wild Goose to then have Planned Parenthood pretty much come in and give a presentation at the end of the day on Saturday. So I had to ask a question, because usually I would be respectful and I usually sit in the back and listen, because there's lots of bizarre things that are said. But I had to say something at this particular session, so I did. So I wrote my question down so they wouldn't get nervous. And so of course I'm sitting in the back and the microphone doesn't reach the back, so I have to get up and go all the way to the front. And so I wanted to be forthright about who I was and why I was there and what my feelings on abortion was. So I said, this is a very hard discussion for me to hear, and I arrive at very different conclusions when it comes to abortion. So my question is, then, as purported proponents of people with disabilities and girls and people of color, how do you reconcile your work and the advocacy of those groups? How do you advocate for abortion when abortion is affecting unborn people of color, unborn people with disabilities, unborn girls? And I was frustrated because the woman from the nonprofit, I can't remember, said, I don't understand your question. And the two Planned Parenthood people did understand my question. I know they've come across it before, so they willingly answered. The first woman shifted the narrative completely, and she talked about how there are instances of injustice when we're talking about people of color, and that's why she is an abortion doula, because she wants to aid people of color. And that was essentially her answer, which she didn't even answer my question. So I was thankful the second Planned Parenthood worker, although she was gender non-binary, so she wouldn't actually appreciate me calling her by female pronouns, but anyway, she had shared with us that she had an abortion, and she actually answered my question honestly, or as honestly as I could have hoped. She said that when she was doing her abortion doula training, they asked her, what are your sticking points? What are the obstacles that would prevent you from being a good abortion doula? And for example, if a woman comes to you and says, I want to have an abortion because this baby, she used the word fetus, is a girl. The Planned Parenthood worker honestly said, that was a hard thing for me to reconcile. I want to advocate for girls, and yet I want to provide abortion care. She said, but the conclusion I ultimately came to was, and then she gave a hypothetical story, so she tried to change the narrative to, well, the woman who wants to abort her baby because it's, again, she used the word fetus, because the baby is a girl, her husband might place her in, it might be because of her husband that she feels like she is being forced to abort her baby. And it might be a dangerous situation for her if she has this girl. So then she's putting herself in danger. And so she's painting these difficult situations in the hypothetical. And she arrives at the conclusion that it's men's fault. But she ultimately sides with abortion advocacy over advocating for unborn girls or people with disability. Disability, mind you, they never even addressed, which I found interesting. Anyway, so if you ever wonder, what does IRD do? I know a lot of my friends and family don't completely understand. We monitor the religious left, and we report on what's being said. And we go and we engage, and really, I mean, it's been a really difficult day. It's been hot, it's been rainy, and I've been listening to some really bizarre sessions, and this one was most frustrating, though. I was most frustrated with Wild Goose. I will tell you, though, after I sat down from asking my question, the woman next to me leaned over and said, thank you for asking that question, because she was with an organization that claims, they call themselves consistently pro-life, so from womb to tomb. And then a Wild Goose volunteer got up, and she asked the next question, which was really a comment. She said, I had an abortion when I was 19. She thanked the women for being abortion doulas, though, because she said she didn't have abortion doulas, and she had a very difficult time after her abortion. She said she felt, now this is a Wild Goose volunteer, she said, I felt my baby move away during the abortion procedure. She could tell her baby was moving in the opposite direction of the abortion tools. She said this in front of the group, which I was very grateful for her honesty. And she talked about how it's very difficult. She's still healing from that, and she's a middle-aged woman now. That was when she was 19 years old. And then after she sat down, another woman came up and said, well, I was 21 when I had my abortion, and I'm very grateful I did. And of course, then we went back to, as a group, celebrating abortion. In fact, and I wrote this down in my journal, but the Planned Parenthood worker, the abortion doula, she said at the very beginning of the breakout session, she used to say all abortion is a tragedy, even though she was pro-choice. She said, I don't say that abortion is a tragedy anymore, because I see abortion as life-saving for women. And this is even if it's progressive, this is at a Christian gathering. So this is what's happening, this is what's being said. And you can say that, well, it happened at Wild Goose. They're the extreme of the progressive Christian spectrum. But I don't think that's true. My colleagues 5 years ago were reporting on Wild Goose, and people would say, well, that's the extreme side of the religious left. And now what they were reporting on, transgender, gender identity issues, that's now mainstream progressive Christian. So I don't believe that it will stay on the outskirts of progressive Christianity when Wild Goose starts inviting Planned Parenthood to give presentations. I think we can expect this to become talking points for progressive Christianity. Anyhow, thank you for listening to me verbally process, but it's been a long day, and I do plan to report on it. I just don't, again, think I have the endurance to spend the evening listening to the session again. So we thank you as IRD for your prayers and your support so that I can even attend Wild Goose, and I hope that you'll continue to pray for us, and I thank you so much. So thank you.